We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. To keep us asleep, to keep us selfish, to keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Thank you so much for joining me. I am Michael Storm. This is my little playground, my little digital sandbox on the internet and around the world. You can find me at towardanarchy.com, and it's always a pleasure to be here each week. I appreciate you tuning in and for just kind of hanging out and coming along for the ride. It's prime time. We're worldwide right here on the Republic Broadcasting Network, and it's just, wow. What a day. What a few days, what days, just what a few minutes leading up to the show. In fact, right just before starting the show, I decided I'll probably end up talking about a bunch of stuff that actually I didn't plan to, or at least one thing in particular that I didn't plan to, and it's going to happen. It has to happen. There's no other way to look at this thing, because I'm tired of having the conversation. Not that it'll end the conversation, but at least make it'll be a case of once and for all, I'll be able to look at it and say, all right, well, I've definitely made my sort of relative definitive statement on the point, so I can feel comfortable going forward. There's a lot of topics and things that I've addressed very specifically over the years and sort of felt like, all right, well, we've kind of put that topic to bed. Not really. Those things still come up, but there's this grounded place for that particular topic to exist in, at least in my mind anyway. Wherever you're finding me at, it's at Toward Anarchy on Facebook and X and Instagram, and wherever it is, take 2 seconds to click that like button. Do it right now. Let me know that you're out there. I truly appreciate it. And go to towardanarchy.com to follow along, as I say. If it's not right there on the front page, click that episodes button or the episodes link, and it's 2025, not for much longer, but the most recent episode, hopefully the one I'm talking about, if I'm doing my part of the job right, is the one that's right up there at top. And by golly, look, there it is. Episode 2537 is what you'd be looking for if you're interested in following along specifically with today's topic and the guest, Fred Moss, who's coming up at the top of the hour. Otherwise, you just go there and click and browse around and find what it is you're looking for, something that interests you. Try the search bar. Hey, there is a little search function to be able to search through the episodes and try to find them. I don't think it works as well as it used to. I don't know if there's something I have to do to go in there to tweak it to make it work a little better, but it is up there. You could give it a shot. But if you're just looking for the current episode, it's 2537. You'll see that. Fred Moss will be my guest. He's coming up at the top of the hour. He's the undoctor, and he'll join me to talk about mental health, psychology, healing through creativity and self-expression. It's a great conversation to look forward to, and we'll do that again just right at the top of the hour. The next hour, hour number 2, it'll be here sooner than you think. Okay, so just before the show started today, it happened to me again, as it does often. Something comes up, something strikes me as being something that needs to be addressed, something that we need to talk about, and the next time I turn on the microphone, hopefully I've remembered that. It doesn't necessarily always work that way, but it's nice when it happens when it's just before the show, and that's what happened today. Just before I'm getting ready to record the show today, I end up getting in a conversation with someone about corporations and incorporating, and about what businesses do and what government's role in business is and what it is these days. And so I I have this fresh in my head, and there's always these huge, silly misconceptions about the whole thing that I just think need an anarchist audit. That's what it is. It needs me, the anarchist, to audit the idea that corporations are bad, that incorporating is bad, that there's something wrong with it, that it wouldn't exist in other circumstances. And so I am going to do that first and foremost before I go into everything else that I did have planned, which you can find up there. The links are up there. I have a ton of links. There's a bunch of stuff really on the menu to talk about and to cover and to give you some sort of anarchist perspective on these things. There's also a quote, "Life, liberty, and property do not exist because men have made laws." That's Frédéric Bastiat. He's saying that. He is not saying that they don't exist. He's saying that they don't exist because laws are in place. It's the other way around. Those things exist. Life exists. Our right to liberty exists. Our right to collect and keep property exists. And it's not because some man, some law, some group, some government says so. And that's one of those things that, taken out of context, somebody would read it their way and want to understand it their way and put their little stink on it and put their little stupid on it is what it is. Because that's what gets really tiresome, is that there's something that's so easily, so demonstrably proven, and somebody will they'll stick to it, but that's not even true, because they won't even stick to it, because they don't stick to it. What they do is they start to waffle a little bit, they backtrack a little bit, they move the goalposts, so to speak. They'll do anything they can to avoid addressing the fact that you've just shown them to be wrong, whether it be through logic or whether it be through an actual example. And just while we're on the subject of anarchy, Pluto lost its planet status in 2006, but it continues to orbit the sun unbothered by scientists' decisions. Just like you, as a individual, as a human being, can continue to orbit the sun on this rock. If you're lucky, maybe you can get off of the rock too. Well, I don't know about luck. Not at this point, anyway. It's not like there's much out there. There's no Wendy's out there to pick up some burgers if you head out there. We're all sort of here on this rock revolving around the sun, and none of us are beholden to anyone else only because we let them. That's the only reason we are. We allow them to do it. We allow these people who supposedly are smarter than us and better than us and can see things in a different way than us and have a plan about how it can work better if we just sit back and give them the power and let them do it. And, well, you see where that gets us. The best example of it is a complete failure, an utter failure. And people go, well, what are you talking about? There's all these millionaires and billionaires and rich people running around and everybody. It's not about the richest of the people. It's about the poorest. And while America has absolutely brought people, and America and capitalism and corporations and incorporating have absolutely brought people in America to a higher standard of living, the fact is that the lower standard of living is really excuse me. So the lowest standard of living is going to be dictated by personality, by personal choices, by inability, those sorts of things. But all of the levels above that are artificial, manipulated places and spaces where people exist are ultimately manipulated by society and government. And so they are artificial. They don't really exist. And what's happening is that we'll talk about this a little bit further into the show if we get to it. It's this idea of the K-shaped economy. And while it is really a thing, it actually is a thing, the value of it and the danger of it is relative to who's telling that part of the story, who's telling you that it's a K-shaped K-shaped economy and why they're telling you it's a K-shaped economy. If you ask somebody in normal circumstances, when the markets are relatively good, when the economy is relatively good, they'll say that things are being done right. They'll make that argument that things are being done right, and that the K-shape shouldn't happen. That people can't get richer and other people get poorer. But it's not really true, and we'll possibly get into some of that. Let's do a couple other things, and then I'll talk to you about these corporations. We'll put it to the test. Anarchist Audit of corporations and incorporating, and I've done a little bit of this before, but it just struck me today, and I had to come back to it. We have to readdress it again, and so we will. But before we do that, I just want to remind you to support Republic Broadcasting, republicbroadcasting.org. Over on the left-hand side is the little donate button, and you just click on that bad boy. A couple of clicks from that, you're making a one-time donation, a regular donation, any amount you choose. You can control it, and you stop it any time you want. And just very simple, and the fact that RBN is here, that I'm here broadcasting across RBN is because of you, because of you guys. You guys have kept this network on the air for years, and I've told you I make this real point. It sounds almost selfish and snotty, but taken in context, it's really not. I don't need Republic Broadcasting Network to do this. I can do this myself. I've done this myself. This connection with Republic Broadcasting Network is there because it's great to have that space. It's great to be surrounded by people of a like mind. And in that, I mean that they all believe that we should be having the conversation, that whatever it is, the conversation, people want to hear it. People want to have this talk about government, about the economy, about the medical institutions and the institutionalization of medical practices that some of us don't believe in or don't support and have very questionable results, and it's just a great thing to be able to come here and say that I'm a part of the family of Republic Broadcasting Network. That's why I do it. I gain no particular benefit from it other than I'm here with the group. I don't make any money from it. They don't pay me to do any of the stuff that I do, not the live show on Wednesday, none of those things. That's not that. I do it because I want to be there in that space having that conversation for you guys that have made RBN what it has become over the years and have kept it on the air, and you guys are amazing, and the network has struggled at times, and we're sort of at the anniversary of John Stadmiller's passing, and that was a few years back, and that changed everything around, and we struggled through that. The network struggled through that, and you guys did it. You made it so we're still here today, and we still get to keep going. If you don't want to do the digital thing, give a buzz to somebody at the network and talk to somebody. Just pick up a phone, 800-724-2719, extension 3, or visit shoprbn.com. That, of course, is the win-win. You support the advertisers. They continue to advertise across the network, and the network continues to be here, that I can do this, and I can be a part of it, and that I can say I'm a part of it, and I can say I'm part of that family, and you're a part of that family, and we appreciate you for doing everything that you've done for us over the years. So back at towardanarchy.com. Episode 2537, Fred Moss coming up at the top of the hour. Have all these links, and we'll get into them. But before we get there, I'm going to talk about corporations and incorporating. And I'm going to do it because we still have this certain group of people. I don't know who they are. Some of them claim to be anarchists. Some of them claim to be libertarians. A lot of them are just leftists still hanging on to leftist ideology is what I end up finding out, which I guess there's some sort of truth to libertarians and anarchists being sort of from the left, derived out of the left. That doesn't mean that they have to rest there. That doesn't mean that they have to glom on to bad ideas, as so many of them do, and fallacies, and sort of outright lies, as a matter of fact. If you really want to get down to it, just outright lies, whether from ignorance or whether out of a sort of animosity, a hate, an intentional attack on something. And in this case, it's corporations, because corporations have this bad rep. They've rep, however you want to, a reputation. They have a bad reputation, and people speak badly of them. That's the rap. So they have a bad rap or a bad rep. It's correct either way. At any rate, they've been given this bad reputation by people rapping about them who don't know what they're talking about. We can literally talk about sort of Billie Eilish, the singer that here just over the last few weeks has been back and forth in the press about her demand, well, she's calling out billionaires. She's saying that billionaires are basically scum and that they should be giving their money away to the poor. And that is stupid. It's a stupid thing, because we give all sorts of money. Well, let me correct that. People with money give all the time to poor people, and there are still more poor people today than there were yesterday. And some of that has to do with statistics and numbers. Some of that has to do with fact, that there are just more people making less today than there were yesterday. And unfortunately, part of the problem of trying to keep up with these things, to sort of tell people about them and prepare them for the things that can happen, is that they're constantly changing, and we're behind the ball on it. There's no getting ahead of it. The only way you get ahead of the economy is that you practice laissez-faire. That's it. You let it do what it's going to do, because it's going to do what it's going to do regardless of what you do to it. Whatever manipulations, rates, printing presses, things that affect the economy. And so it gets tough to try to show people what a stable, normal economy would look like when you don't really have one, when you have nothing but constant manipulation after manipulation after manipulation. But the thing about that is you can show exactly where that gets us. It gets us here, where everything is basically broken. So the manipulations aren't working. And you can claim, well, it's not the right manipulations. We'll just go back through all of the manipulations. Which one of them should have worked and which one of them shouldn't work? And if the one that is there that didn't work, where's what would have worked? You have to be able to put that in. You have to be able to take that. I absolutely would put you to task and make you insert that working function in there, because you'd have to prove to me that what would solve the problem in your eyes would be this thing. And it would have to show it, and it would have to be demonstrable. You would have to be able to see it. You would have to be able to follow the logical path of how this is going to fix this. And so you can look at all of these different manipulations that have happened over the years. It is whatever part of the economy it is, whether it's the money itself or the rates about the money, or whether it's wages or taxes or whatever manipulation of the economy they've managed to pull off. It's all this sort of ever-changing and flowing sort of thing. But you can look at it and say, well, your intervention here caused these things. We can look back at these things historically and show how interventions have caused the problems that we have. And so it's unlikely that you're going to be able to suggest an intervention into laissez-faire, into chaos, basically, and suggest. That's the idea, is that when you predict an economy, you go out, your government goes out and it hires some economist or something to represent the economy, to guess what the economy is going to be, to set rates for the future, to do all these things that they supposedly have these economists to do. That's guesswork. That's what that is. They're saying guess how many or how much of this or that or the other thing we're going to need over X amount of time. And while you can do that for a relative period of time and be fairly correct, the fact is that it doesn't work beyond a very short period of time. And so after any forecasting, any guesswork that goes into the economy is only going to be valid for a certain amount of time. After that point, the chaos, the laissez-faire takes over, things change in response to the thing that you've done to guess at what's going to happen, and the manipulations that came out of the guess, that the economists guessed and said, well, we need to do this, and they go in and change rates. Well, then they've just dropped more water into the pool of chaos, and so how are you supposed to guess where that goes? And so you put yourself in a situation where short-term prognostication about the economy appears to be good guesswork. It appears to be, oh, well, you can figure this out. You can guess at what it's going to take, who's going to need what, and how much of it they're going to need in every single sector of every single business of every part of the economy. Except that it's not. If you continue to look at the forecast further and further out, you would see that they're wrong, and you would see that the percentage goes way down, and it's never very high to begin with. That's the thing about it. The percentage of the correctness, historical correctness of groups like the Federal Reserve, people that are these economists that are at the heart of the economy and are in control of certain manipulations, or at least have a say in certain manipulations. If you were to go back and look historically across these things, obviously I will bring an economist in here to prove this for you. You're not going to believe me saying it, but I will guarantee you that so I will guarantee you that before the end of the year, I will have an economist in here that will prove what I'm saying, that has done the work, that has gone back and he's looked at the history and he said that, A, B, and C did this, this, and this, and there's a diminishing return over time on the value of the thing that they did, and that their guess in the first place, that their first place guesses every single time were of extremely low value, and so it's worse than a coin flip. I guarantee it, and I will get an economist on here to prove it. We'll come back to the conversation of that specifically about their inability to forecast the economy into the future past short periods of time. I will have an economist address. You can mark my words on that. It's coming up, and it will be within the next few weeks. I think I think I got Dr. Dean Lloyd next week, so I think I will do it the week after Dr. Dean Lloyd. So it'd be like the first week of December is what we're looking at. So maybe the 6th if I'm looking at the right calendar. It should be the next available show that I would have, because I could shuffle some things around and make something happen, and I know exactly who to go to talk about it. So that's happening. I'm going to do that, because you know what? I can say all these things without any evidence in front of you, and you can try to dismiss them, but I guarantee you that I'm correct, and I guarantee you that the evidence is out there, and I'll bring proof of it at a later point. So real quick, let's do this. Let's talk about the corporation specifically and incorporating. All right, so the gist of it is that somebody comes along and says that incorporation is a thing that is guided by the state, that it's for the state, that the state demands it, that the only reason that people do it is that the government forces them to do it, that otherwise nobody would ever incorporate, and so that corporations are completely a fabrication of the government, that they wouldn't exist in a stateless society. If the government were gone, corporations wouldn't exist. That's the basic claim from a large portion of economically ignorant fools and people who will, in the same breath, walk around and tell you about how smart they are about money or something along those lines, how well they understand the economy. Because the fact is, just saying that, those are two separate things. People and their ability to manage money and being able to understand how economics works are entirely two different things. Because so much of it is about opportunity, and because so much crony capitalism exists where you actually can use the state to keep your competition out, then it obviously it skews things. It messes up the market. Just like we're talking about with the economy. When the government gets involved, it screws up the markets. It screws up things. It messes it up so that there's no natural flow of things, and so the natural flow then becomes trying to get around whatever barriers have been placed in front of the economy, generally speaking, by the government, by this third party, whatever it happens to be. So when you're talking about corporations and incorporating, you're talking about creating a contract. And the claim that creating a contract it's two people or multiple people coming together and creating a contract that says we're going to pool our resources and we're going to create this entity that is a business so that you can address this business, so that you can address what this business is, because this business is only a part of me, it's only a part of this other person, and we are only parts of it. The whole of it are all of these other things, all the other employees, the assets of the business that don't belong to me as an individual. They belong to the business. They belong to the partnership. That's what the business is the partnership, and that's what incorporation is the partnership. And while the government has come along and usurped that so that it controls everything that it does, as it does, that's what government does, it doesn't mean that in the absence of government, people wouldn't still pool their resources, their wealth, their capital, their intelligence, put those things together, create a contract, a corporation, a different entity than themselves, to do business with other people, because it's not me doing that's different. If it's a small business, I am doing business with you individually, and as a small business owner, I don't have to incorporate. There are lots of different options, but the tax breaks and things would get you to incorporate, and this is the tip of the iceberg when you're talking about the difference between corporations incorporating and corporate welfare, about government protectionism, about giving corporations money or tax breaks or whatever it is because they have some sort of favored status through the state. They're two separate arguments. They're two separate conversations. It's just like the conversation about the immigration and the immigrants that come across the border, and the bigger problem being, supposedly, this would be the argument of many, many people who are against the immigration or who demand that immigrants go through a particular process before they cross an imaginary line. And it's because they somehow can get, in some cases, sometimes, it's a really dubious claim, generally speaking, but they can get the benefits that the rest of us have to pay for and that they don't pay back into. Well, okay, let's just assume that that's true. Let's just assume that they're generating wealth here. That means them coming and working here and doing the work for American businesses that trade in American dollars and pay American taxes and all that stuff. Let's just assume that they're coming here and working here doesn't contribute anything to the economy. Stupid, but let's just assume that it doesn't, all right? And so that they're not contributing anything to the economy and they're just taking from it because, well, they work less than minimum wage or they work completely off the books and so they've applied for welfare. it's almost impossible for them to do it. There are some places that they can do it, and some things, and there are ways around things, of course, obviously. Government's barriers are, they don't block off until, they're like the border wall. There's great big holes in it. And it's like, there's a wall here, and then there's nothing for miles over here. And it's like, oh, well, that's really going to keep some people out. And as soon as they figure out that it's open over here, they just walk over here and come around it. Well, that's all government interventions into everything. And so when you're looking at corporations and incorporating, there are a couple of different conversations that you're having there. But the most important one is the conversation about the people that are creating the business. And there's a reason you'd say, oh, well, you should be liable for what you do as a company, for as a corporation, for your customers and what happens to your customers. But that's not true. That's only relatively true to what actually happens to a customer in any given situation. The fact is that with a corporation, the idea is that it's bigger than yourself, that you can't afford to do it, that you don't have the manpower to do it, that you need investors, blah, blah, blah. This is why there's an agreement. So the corporation, the incorporating paperwork, the things, the structure of the business, all of these things are spelled out. And depending on how detailed you get into it, how big the corporation is expected to be, and what sort of expectations can come from having a large corporation, there are more things spelled out in it. A simple agreement like the one between myself and my business partners here simply spells out what our percentages are and who is in charge of what in a general sense, what the expectations of them are. And it gives a sort of general loose guideline for for culpability for the operation of the business. But once you get beyond that, there are all these things that are out of your control. First of all, that's why you do it, why you have the incorporation with the partners, straight up. Because you can't control what they do, and you shouldn't be liable for what they do if they do something wrong, if they do something criminal necessarily. If you participate in it, that's different. But just because you're partners with somebody doesn't mean you participate in the fraud with them. Let me give you a perfect example. I have had to do this in terms of setting up a corporation to protect myself from the business partners. Not overtly, but it's certainly benefited me. If you followed along for the years, just my simple little comic book shop and our corporation that is Amazing Fantasies, and before it Hooked on Comics and Cards. If we didn't have the sort of relative proper documentation between us as individuals, this contract, this incorporation paperwork between us, we would have could have very easily lost every single thing. The entire corporation, every bit of it, all of the assets, all the comic books, all the games, all the cards, all the toys, even all the stuff that we put in there. Why? Because if it wasn't there, it wouldn't spell out what belonged to us, what we brought to the party. These things wouldn't be in there. And when somebody comes along that's a partner and defrauds people, us, our customers, the people that we're buying our product from, we're insulated from it because he did this act on his own. And we can look at it and say, we weren't a part of this. This was not us. We did not agree with this. This wasn't a part of our corporation. This is not something that's spelled out in here. He did this on his own. We're not liable for his actions. We could not stop him from taking those actions. We did not know he was engaging in those actions. And that's 3 people in a comic book shop in Topeka, Kansas. What the hell is somebody supposed to do if they're partners with not just the people that are forming the corporation, but what about all the people that buy the that buy into the corporation afterward, the people that come along and they buy stock in it, and you have the board members, and you have all these other people that you have no control over, but they have an interest in the company, and they can act, relatively speaking, depending on how much of the company they own. This includes shareholders. They can act in certain ways, and they can act criminally on behalf of the corporation, but not on your behalf. This shouldn't be that hard to explain, because all of us here should agree that if you didn't do something, that if you're not responsible for the actions that harm someone else or harm someone else's property, that you're not responsible for them. That's it. You didn't do it. You're not responsible for it. And it's contracts like Incorporation that spell out who would be responsible for a thing, or they separate the responsibility. What about the employees? I'm not responsible for the actions of my employees. I'm responsible for setting up a framework, an incorporation, a corporation, some guidelines, some tools, some places for them to be able to do their business. But they're not authorized to harm my customers. They're not authorized to do things that aren't spelled out within their incorporation, within the corporation, within their hiring documents, within their shareholder documents, whatever, that gives them the right, the ability, any special privilege to harm our customers in any way at all, period. And so when they act to harm our customers outside of outside of what is company policy, they're responsible, not me. I didn't do that. I don't allow them to do that. I can't stop them from doing that necessarily. If I could potentially put something in place. If I could have, maybe that's a longer conversation about a protection that should have been put in place, and maybe I am liable at some point for not having put that protection in place. But it's still not the same thing as actively having taken advantage of somebody, damaged somebody or their property. Why do I have to explain this? Why do I have to explain this to people who claim to be free individual people who are responsible for their own actions and expect other people to be responsible for their own actions? What is this idea that without the state, all of these other parts of the economy and life wouldn't exist? I don't know if you understand this or not, but you really should. People existed before the system. That the system comes after, that all of the rules, all the guidelines, all of those things come after. And you know that the people who existed before that, they had contracts and they had agreements and they went into business together and they pooled their assets and their capital and their resources together, and they protected themselves by creating documents, legal documents that otherwise show that this person is responsible for this person is responsible for this person holds this percentage, this person holds this percentage, this person meets this goal, they'll get this person doesn't meet this goal, they're out. These are all things that can and are spelled out in different levels of complicated contractual agreements called incorporation. Now, if you don't understand all that I just said, just turn off the radio. I know it's not, I'm not supposed to tell you to do that things, because you're an idiot. You're a complete friggin' tool. There's no hope for you. What I just spelled out is simple, easy to understand, makes complete sense. There's nothing to argue about it. I literally don't believe there's a thing that you could disprove about what I just said in any way, shape, or form. So now let's move on to the second part of it. The second part of it is that corporations incorporate because they get welfare, because they get businesses, because they get special privileges. That's not true. I didn't incorporate because I get something out of it. I incorporated because of all the things that I just told you. Period. That's it. I didn't incorporate because I have to. I didn't incorporate because the government tells me I have to, because I could very easily be a part of this business or any other business silently, quietly, putting money into it, getting money back out of it without anybody knowing. It's real easy to do. I don't even have to explain to somebody how to do it. Just go do it. Just go find somebody who's willing to make you money, that has money, that has product, that has services, that has a business, whatever, and you tell them, I want to be a silent, non-existent, not on paper partner. Here's what I have to bring to the table. Give me money back under the table. Give me my returns back under the table. It's easy to do. You could find somebody to do it for you, and nobody would be any the wiser, especially in the small amounts that we're talking about in most small businesses, and which is most businesses in America. So this claim is then that it's done for the purpose of getting, you get to be one of the boys. That's not it at all. I don't want to be one of the boys. I don't want to be involved in the higher level manipulations of the economy and businesses that is guided by governments. But I do want to be protected. I do want to have a piece of paper that spells out what I get. So if you go to this guy, this imaginary person that exists everywhere, that you could give them money and make money back through them without having any paperwork that points to it, until that guy decides to screw you, and then you don't have a document, you don't have a contract, you don't have an incorporation that shows that you are due X percentage of the money that he made. Do you get it? Do you get? I'm acting incredulous, and why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? Because I get real tired of trying to explain to people very simple, very easy ideas that make perfect sense, that the arguments that they have against it are demonstrably false, that they only exist in a certain realm, that yes, it's true that there are corporations, that there are people who incorporate, that take advantage of the system, that use their incorporation, but you don't need to be incorporated to do that. The mafia is not incorporated. What do? They go around forcing people to give them money, forcing people out of business, forcing people out of neighborhoods, protecting certain businesses. You don't see the difference? You don't see the analogy? It's the same thing. It truly is. Listen, this idea that corporations, that incorporation, that contracts of any kind don't exist, that the law doesn't exist outside the state, is silly, because the law is not political and social opinions used as weapons against people. The law is the things that protect individuals from each other in a very real sense, from the actions of each other. You go out and you damage your neighbor's property. Real law gives you a remedy through which to be compensated give him to be compensated for the damage that you've done to his property, and vice versa. That's all the law is for. The fact that it's been perverted, is again a problem that's with the system. It's not with the natural travel of people across lines. It's not with the natural desire to pool your resources, the need to pool your resources, the want to invest in things that you think are important in society, and to have your money and your wealth and your talents to flow in a certain direction and to get a return from it and to have that spelled out. It's a really weird thing. It's a really weird thing to talk to people who otherwise claim to be individuals, who otherwise claim to be responsible, who otherwise claim that the reason America, that the reason the world is the way it is because people aren't responsible for themselves, and that the government has usurped responsibility in so many places. Well, yeah, of course that's true, but that doesn't mean that there's not a natural place for the organization of people and their wealth, and that they don't, and that there's something out there that magically, when the state goes away, money goes away, everybody just starts trading and bartering, all the laws of economics and all the protections needed in a legal sense just suddenly disappear out the window. Again, what started the conversation today? It was that quote, right? The Bastille quote that life, liberty, and property do not exist because men have made laws. Life, liberty, and property existed, and then men made laws to protect those things. That's the entire formation of the American nation is about protecting individuals and their right to their property and their right to their liberty and their right to gain wealth as they see fit and to live their lives as they see fit, so long as they're not violating other people, so long as they're not taking from other people what isn't voluntarily given. And you know how you prove that something is voluntarily given? When someone stands up and says, hey, I didn't give that. That's not mine. I wasn't supposed to put in that percentage. I'm not responsible for that. You have a contract. That's what you do. I'm done with the conversation. That is the anarchist audit of corporations and incorporating. And yes, corporations and incorporations would exist without the state. In a stateless society, in an anarchist society, in a voluntary society, people will still come together, pool their wealth, their resources, their time, their energy, their money, their brains, their physical prowess, and create entities that don't exist, that are legal fictions for a reason. And I guess that part of that is that people just don't understand the law, and they just don't understand property, and they just don't understand natural right. The sort of natural rights that suggest that we can hang out with each other if we choose to or not to. If we can put a business together if we choose to or not to. Those natural, that type of a right, because that's another conversation about rights. Well, rights don't exist. You don't have any rights. Well, rights are just imaginary things that people came up with on paper. Really? I don't have a right to live? I don't have a right to pursue my life as I see fit? Of course I do. I'm here. I have every right in the world. The only thing that makes a difference between crossing the line from right to violating another person is your own individual morality. And you suckers have no morality. You're always looking for a reason to push morality beyond some place that it would naturally exist, to put it into place in a space of something that's made up, as if it didn't exist without other people's opinion of it. Well, the fact is that I would still be a moral person regardless of what you think, regardless of what that person thinks or that person thinks over there. I'm a moral person because I choose to be that way, and my morality is based on reality, and it's very simple. I don't go around harming other people or their property. That's it. I don't do it. And when I do it, I'm responsible for it, and I make amends for it. That's life. That's reality. And all of it, everything is a right. You have a right to everything. You have a right to kill whoever. You have a right to do anything that you want, anytime, any place. And then time, place, and people have any right they want to respond. So the question is one of morality. Okay, I have the right because I have the ability to, and nobody's going to impede me from doing so, to have whatever I want, to take whatever I want from somebody. And they have the right to stop me. That's all I mean when I'm talking about rights and who has rights and who doesn't. So you can argue semantics. You can try to argue about positive rights, negative rights, things like that. But listen, once you've been told, once it's been explained to you really clearly, something like the corporations thing or something like the rights thing, where it doesn't matter what you think or what they think or what the government has done to manipulate and change things or what it calls rights or what it's written down on paper or what it calls laws, the little pieces of paper, the opinions that they come up with, none of it matters because none of it actually makes you do anything or stops you from doing anything. So everything at that point is a choice of your own morality. It's not about laws. It's not about who wrote the laws, who are in control of the laws. Those are all just ideas. Real laws are, you have the right to do whatever you want, to whoever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, however you want, because you exist, and nothing on paper stops you from doing it. The only thing that would stop you from doing whatever you want to is the other person. And so that's the thing about rights, right? The rights that are spelled out for us, that thing about rights that we have, supposedly, is that they're not a right if they involve anybody else having to do something that they didn't want to do or wouldn't necessarily want to do or have to provide. So you don't have a right to housing. You have a right to have a home, but you don't have a right to have a home that somebody else had to build for you, that somebody else had to give the property, that somebody else had to pay for, that somebody else... You don't have that right. You have a right to eat. You have a right to feed yourself, to look for food. Nobody has a right to stop you from trying to get food, except that they do. Especially if it's their food and you want to try to take it from them. So this idea of rights... It's all in this question. It all comes down to a question of morality. The idea that there's some right, well, it stops at the moral question. Is this right that you have, does it impose upon somebody else? Does it force them to do something that they want to do? Then it's not a right. Then it's one of those, sure you can do it, but you shouldn't, because natural law suggests that you can go around doing that. You can violate anybody. You have the right. Natural law suggests it. You have the right to go around doing whatever you want to do to whoever you want to do it, and they also have the right to stop you. And eventually that's what will happen. You go around taking advantage of people, harming people, damaging their property, whatever it is. Eventually you're going to come up to somebody who will make you pay for it. And it may be the ultimate price that you pay for it. That's a real law. The idea that things don't exist because the government is that the only reason something exists is that because the government is here is demonstrably false. Look at every single individual one of these things, and they all existed before the government, and that includes welfare. Welfare existed before the government. Do you not understand that the idea of welfare from the government, through the government, is just that they've usurped these causes. They've usurped the places where these things, where you would normally get these things, where the church and where the community and where associations previously provided the things that other people needed, people in their association, they helped each other. Those things were usurped by government. They were taken over by government because one person over here doesn't get what they believe should be their fair share, and then somebody comes along and looks at it, oh, well, all these guys over here have all theirs, and this guy doesn't have enough. Well, why doesn't he have anything? Well, he's not part of the association, doesn't work as many hours, he doesn't do all these things. Well, that shouldn't keep him from having to be, that he shouldn't have a basic home and food on his table. Well, yes, it should, if I don't want to have to pay for it, if I don't want to have to pay for it for him. If I want to do it voluntarily, if I want to do it on the local and community level, and I say, hey, here you go, here's what I have to offer, it's yours, take it, do what you can with it, hopefully it improves your life, that's fine. That's a wonderful thing, it's a beautiful thing. More people would do it if they weren't already forced to pay for all of these things and all of these people that are already on the dole, that are in this system. So once again, let me reiterate. The problem with things like incorporation, the problem with things like immigration, are not that these things are unnatural things that would happen if the state weren't there to make them happen. They're exactly the opposite of that. They are things that would happen normally, naturally, that the state has co-opted, and you need to stop looking at it. You need to stop surrendering the things that we do, that we have, that we make, that we create and participate in as people. Stop surrendering them to the system. I've been telling you this for years. Stop surrendering our language. Stop surrendering our label, our money, the descriptions of the things that we value, our rights, our morality, all of these. Stop surrendering them to the people who manipulate them. Just stop it. Stop pretending that the word capitalism is bad because you don't like how somebody that is a capitalist spends their money. If you don't like how that person is a capitalist, what about all the other people that are doing wonderful things that are capitalists, that are using their capital and investing it in places, investing it in themselves, investing it in other people, and investing in it? My God. This is why there's no hope. This is why I say that anarchy's not for you. You're not ready for it. You're not responsible enough. You're not even smart enough to understand the difference between a natural system and a manipulated system on any level, whether it's economics, whether it's personal, whether it's psychological, whether it's health. It doesn't matter. You guys run around here pretending like you have all this greater understanding of the world, and you think you're so much higher and lofty than anybody else out there, because you just know it. You just know it. And then you come to me and you say something along the lines of corporations wouldn't exist without the state. And everything you believe, everything I've ever heard you state, everything that you've claimed to understand and believe about individualism, about rights, about morality, about liberty, about freedom, about America, about laissez-faire, about capitalism, about economics, it all goes out the window because it's obvious that you don't even get the basics. You don't even get the simplest of ideas. They're beyond you. And so it's okay. You need the state. You may as well just submit. Just stop. Stop pretending like you're awake. Stop pretending like you're going to improve yourself, that anything is going to get better, because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. From one minute to the next, you have no basis in reality, no firm rock on which to stand. And I'm not talking about Peter. I'm not talking about the church, because if half of you actually believed any of that nonsense that comes out of that particular place of morality and organization, then the place would be a lot better off, because you people would live and let live, and you would let your light shine on people and expose the darkness, as opposed to going out there and using government or using some other manipulation to try to force people to see things your way. I'm so sick of all of you statists, all of you cowards, all of you with your excuses, your reasons for why it's okay to give this person over here power to violate this person over here. It's because you don't understand what's going on. Simple words like freedom and liberty and individualism and rights and morality are beyond your conception, so just give it up. Just turn yourself over to the state and leave the rest of us alone, because the rest of us are trying to make it work out here. We really are, and we don't need your help, because you're just making it worse. You're screwing it up. You're out here pretending that, you're absolutely right. That's right. It's all about the individual. It's all about empowerment. It's all about the importance. Well, not in this area. Not in this one. Not in corporations. There's no way a corporation can be a good thing, because, corporations are bad. Corporations they're about profit. They're about making profit. They're not about people. Or they're destroying the environment. They're doing this. They're doing that. I can't anymore. I don't even want to. It's ridiculous. It's so many times anymore I see or hear the stupid conversations like that, and I just give up. I just don't. I start to say something and I say, you know what? I forget it. It's not even worth it. It's not worth my breath. It's not worth the time it takes for me to iterate something to you that you just can't understand, that you won't understand because you don't want to. There's nothing complicated about anything that I said today. There's nothing untrue about anything I said today, but there's still going to be all of these people out there that say I'm wrong. There's no proof that I'm wrong. There's all the proof in the world that I'm absolutely 100% right, but they're going to say I'm wrong. We didn't get to any of the stuff at towardanarchy.com. The links are up there, episode 2537. I got to get Fred Moss in here. He's the On-Doctor, and we're going to talk to him next about mental health and healing through creativity and self-expression. So stick around here on Toward Anarchy. We'll be right back.
When did you first discover you wanted to rule the world?
I was 6 when I realized I could run society better than the morons who were in charge.
That old, huh?
You're listening to Toward Anarchy.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
All right, here we go, off into hour number 2, towardanarchy.com to follow along. And when you get there, all the information, everything, always, it's there for you. That's what it's all about, right? All the links, everything that you might be interested in that I chat about with my guest, everything that I do through the entire show there at towardanarchy.com. You're looking for episode 2537, and you will see that my guest is Fred Moss, and he is a college dropout, but he's also an MD. Sometimes things work out. He dropped out of college and he went into the workplace, and he went into a very specific workplace and was, I guess, given new purpose, sort of witnessing the treatment of adolescent boys in state-run mental facilities. And so I guess that gave him the drive to turn it around and go back to school and get his degree, and then later on found Welcome to Humanity, and eventually do something so egregious that he ended up here having to chat with me about it all. So, Fred, I really appreciate you taking the time to come chat with me, especially after all the scheduling. My audience knows about it because it's been going on for a few weeks now, and it's affected all my other guests for the last month. Hanging out there with me through all this, trying to get it figured out and straighten it out, and being real flexible. It's been one of the cool things, hooking up with people on the Podmatch system. It's just been really great. I've made some great friends and had great connections and conversations. And so it's wonderful to be able to do it again and finally get a chance to talk with you. So I appreciate your time.
Well, yeah, it's an honor and a privilege. I really look forward to our conversation, Michael. Thanks for putting up with us as well. The flexibility takes two ways, and we did what we could and did what we did, and now here we are having a real conversation. So, thank the lucky stars and the powers for making that happen. Yeah.
Well, you just make it work, right? That's what we do in life, especially in relationships, and when you're trying to get to know people and you're trying to have the conversation and you're trying to find the common ground. That's what you do. You make it work. You do it until it happens. And you get there and you get to that point where you can reach the common ground, or decide that there is no common ground, that there's no conversation to be had, and just move on. I really do appreciate the time. I know that's one of those things that everybody's got their thing going on, and obviously you have been You've been doing your thing for a long time now, 4 decades or so, if not more, in this psychological experiment, I guess, that you've run up against. So tell me about it and how this all affected you and where you're at, and just kind of give me a brief idea of who it is you are now and how you got there, and then we'll just kind of jump into some conversation from there.
Sure. Thank you for that. Yeah. So I'm going to go back a long ways. I'm going to go back to that first day I was born. And the first day I was born.
All right, get there. Yeah.
Yeah. The first day I was born to be a healer. I was born to be a healer and bring joy, peace, and unity to a family in chaos and disarray. I had two older brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me, and they were with my parents. And as you can guess, with 2 teenagers, it was likely that there was a whole lot of conflict going on between the 4 of them. And,
sure.
The whole purpose of me being born was to, in fact, come down and bring some purpose to this whole family of 4. Which later became a family of 6, by the way. I have a younger sister, but I don't want to discount her, but she wasn't there yet. And my idea was to be, to communicate, to bring joy and peace by being someone who could entertain, or being someone who could make other people smile, or being someone who could, steal the show and be a little bundle of joy. I did all of that for him, and it worked out very well for a few years, my brothers told me, and I haven't been continuous for 67 years, but anyways, my job was only a 2-year stint, and it worked out well until my sister was born, and then things happened and changed in other directions. But the thing I really learned is that I was very enchanted with this whole idea of communication and the power of what happens when I exert myself, when I actually express myself. And I could see that I could change a room, and I really wanted to learn how to do it well. I'd watch my brothers and parents talk, and it was like, where do I learn how to communicate? Where do I learn how to talk and listen like they're doing? And I figured it must happen in school, that's where everyone goes. That must be where it was. So off to school I went.
Naivete.
And I'm only 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, right.
So, it's like, okay, let's go get it in school. And so I went to school. I was very precocious, and I had already learned many different things that most of my colleagues didn't know about, not only sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but that too, but also about writing and reading and mathematics. I knew a little bit when I came into kindergarten. So I was kind of bored, and I talked a lot. There was no teacher who forgot having me as a student in elementary school, because Freddie talked a lot, and I did. But I was told often, to sit down, be quiet, and do what I say, and, do it the way I do it, and then I'll pass you into the next grade. That's sort of what the plan was, is that it wasn't open discourse being promoted at all in elementary school, as we all know. So I figured, well, maybe the big kids learn in junior high. And so when I got to junior high, it got worse. And then I got to high school, it got even worse. And, it's just like, sit down, be quiet, listen, watch the board, all those things. I learned how to communicate, most definitely, but it wasn't in school. I learned how to communicate in the streets. I learned how to communicate by going past the boundaries where my mom told me not to go. I learned how to ride my bike all over town. I learned how to hitchhike. I learned how to be with people in multiple different ways of life, and I loved communicating. And so then I went to school with the idea that someday I'll learn how to communicate. And the first time I went to college, it was at University of Michigan. I love their helmets, and they were only 40 minutes away. And so off I went. And the idea was that communication wasn't taught in Ann Arbor either. It was taught in Ann Arbor, but not at the University of Michigan. So I dropped out of school after like a year and a half, because it wasn't going to work for me to be in engineering school for sure. And that's where I was, and got on a Greyhound bus and took that bus all the way to Berkeley, California from Detroit, Michigan. And I spent the summer in Berkeley, California, trying to figure out what my life was about, working at,
When was it? What year was this?
Oh, this was 1978.
78. Wow.
Yeah.
Culture shock.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I had a great summer. I did figure out a lot about
you did.
my life, but it wasn't sustainable. So we decided, It's not time to go back to school. And there was this new industry breaking through. So my parents and my brothers thought I would be good at it. So they told me about it, and they thought I should go back and study that. You may have heard of the industry. It's actually called computers. And computers was the thing that was happening. And there was one computer in all of Michigan that was worthwhile, and that was at the University of Michigan. It was a 2-acre facility, and we'd spend all day and all night there with punch cards and batch jobs and just doing all of that. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be doing this my life either. So I dropped out a second time. And This time I made it very clear that under no conditions would I go back to school. There's no way. So I got this job. My mom got me an application. You mentioned it earlier in the intro. She got me an application to work as a child care worker in a state hospital for adolescent boys, state mental hospital. And I began as that. And, I thought I would only stay for 3 weeks until the orientation was over. And then I'd take my 3 paychecks, buy myself a car, and get around the country and see what my life was about. That's what my intention was. But on the 4th week, my friend Paul, who later became a really good friend, convinced me to go up to Meadowview 5, where the floor's 17-year-old boys were. And it was like, okay, we'll do it. I'll do it for E. I guilted me into doing it. And off we went on that Monday. And before too long, I got to really actually like the job. I really enjoyed communicating with these so-called kids who were only like 5 years younger than me, and really connecting with them and listening to them and being with them and not seeing them as less than, just other humans, bumbling and stumbling like me, trying to figure out what life is about. And it was like a brilliant thing. It was so much fun to get paid for communicating. Like, that's what that really was. I just had to hang out with my dudes, and then I would learn, they would learn, and we would both heal. It was really fantastic. The thing I didn't like about that job, and I did like the job quite a bit, actually, it was an afternoon shift, and so there was a lot of freedom, and the admins were already gone, and so we just had, played softball, went on field trips, played basketball, had a lot of conversations. It was pretty awesome. The idea was that I didn't like psychiatry. I really hated psychiatry, actually. I hated the way the psychiatry was headed. We'd call the doc when there was trouble, when Timmy and Tony got in a fight or Jimmy was up too late. And he'd come down, he'd interview Timmy and Tony for like 4 seconds. And then he'd come to us and interview us for like 7 seconds. And then he'd go into the nursing station and write something in a chart with his pen. And then we'd have to go retrieve Jimmy and Johnny and Tony and hold them down on the quiet room floor while we gave them an injection of some sort of sedative cocktail. And if they were left in a stupor, then we would call that a success. Now, some people think that that's just like that used to happen or something. That's happened already hundreds of times this morning all over this country in multiple psychiatric hospitals. Don't fool yourself. Don't think that this is like old news or like somehow an outlier. This is happening all over still, for sure. And I just didn't like it. I found it to be pretty barbaric. I found it to be really disrespectful to the child or to the patient, to the client. I didn't like holding them down. I didn't like being violent. I didn't like the chemical restraint aspect. I didn't like the idea that there was no conversation. I didn't like a lot of those pieces. And I felt like I could make a big difference in the world of psychiatry if I brought my deep knowledge and deep commitment to communication at the heart of healing into that field. And my brother had already been a psychiatrist, 14 years older than me. So I knew that there was a pathway I could take, but of course it would require me going back to school. And so back to school I went, and I completed my degree in downtown Detroit, and then went to medical school at Northwestern in downtown Chicago, and had a great time for those years, and then spat out, got myself a residency in Cincinnati and then a fellowship also in Cincinnati. And now here I was, an adolescent psychiatrist, just like I had planned to be 9 years earlier. And as a psychiatrist, there was like an opportunity to make a difference, but the typecasting that psychiatry had gone through was substantial, meaning that what psychiatrists had now become, even more so than before, were essentially diagnosticians and pharmacologists. Like that's what we were being asked to do. But that isn't what we were being asked to do when I chose to go into medical school. There was actually still a very large piece of listening to our clients and caring about them. But this got washed out in those next several years. But here I was with sunken costs. I had spent 26 years in school and had really committed myself to being a psychiatrist. And now, talking and learning about my patients wasn't even part of my job description anymore. But I was learning how to do that and finding a way to do it anyways, sort of like over and above or alongside or parallel to being a typecast psychiatrist, one who indeed has had over 30,000 patients and over 100,000 prescriptions later. I was asked to be a diagnostician and a pharmacologist, but I hated every single prescription that I wrote, and I hated every single diagnosis that I made. And I don't see people as I do see your diagnosis, by the way. I just see what you have. You do have a diagnosis. I'll be glad to give it to you if you like. I'm a clinician. You can listen to me. You can trust me. You ready for your diagnosis?
Yeah, lay it on me.
You sure? You strapped in? Okay, here we go. Da-da-da-da. Your diagnosis is Michael Storm. Period. You see, that's the only thing you are.
Yeah.
Everything else is made up.
I love that.
any way I label you, any sort of tag that I put on you, anything like that, it's all made up, man. And as soon as I give it to you, if you agree that you have it, now we do have it. But until, we don't really have it until I say so, and then you agree that you say so. And now we have an entity that we both agree that you have. And that's the way psychiatric diagnoses work. And then, if we look at that, I really find it to be absurd, in fact, and ludicrous that we get called ourselves conditions. We call ourselves, like, maybe there's nothing wrong with any of us. That's the whole point. Maybe there's nothing mentally ill about any of us. Maybe, as Jiddu Krishnamurti said, was that it's no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Yeah.
And that's what he said. And it's like, it is not mental health. It's not on us. If you're uncomfortable in the world, that's not really about you being sick. There's a lot of great reasons to be uncomfortable. How long would it take us to come up with 100 reasons to be depressed? Probably
as long as it takes to say them.
4 minutes. Yeah. How long would it take for us to come up with 100 reasons to be anxious? Same thing. Yeah. How about terrified? Yeah. Same thing. How about resentful? Same thing. How about regretful? Same thing. How about awkward? Same thing. How about distracted? Same thing. We got the reasons. There's no shortage of reasons to be uncomfortable in the world. So being uncomfortable does not suggest that there's anything wrong with you at all. Being uncomfortable is not comfortable. I give you that, and I'm not telling you that get over it. There's some massive discomfort in life, but having that discomfort does not mean there's something inherently wrong with you. So that's an important piece of what I discovered, when I came out as a psychiatrist. And I've pretty much worked in every single area known to psychiatry that has an impact in the medical world. I've had a leadership role in my life in those areas. And that's literally everything. I've checked the boxes, and from orphanages to nursing homes to prisons to jails to inpatient units, outpatient units, rehab units, halfway houses, partial hospital programs, the whole thing. I've had leadership roles in each of those. And I've been all over this country as a locum tenens and all over the world as a telepsychiatrist in Thailand, Bhutan, Nepal, Israel, France, England, Italy. And the idea here, again, is that my whole job, as I see it, is that if I connect with somebody, that's how I heal them. If there's that where we really get a true and honest, resonating, high-frequency connection between two people through communication and conversation, that's where healing takes place. And it takes place right here. It could take place right here as well. If you and I connect, we're creating some healing for ourselves, and then we're creating healing for others who have the audacity to come on and listen to your show one more time. And so when they do that, they get to heal and learning about how healing goes by connecting or by relating. We say, oh yeah, I can relate to that. When we relate to it, it's a powerful feeling of healing. It's a powerful feeling of not being alone, of being part of the human race, of being someone who can resonate with another person's experience. There's nothing going on inside of psychiatry that's even remotely close to that level of power when we actually truly connect. And so it's a made-up story that when you get a diagnosis of alphabet soup, BAD or ADD or PTSD or ASD or whatever you think you have, MDD or I don't know, whatever you think you have, when you get that, it's kind of a myth that getting that diagnosis and then getting some form of a treatment or often a medication that's associated with that diagnosis is going to make you better. In fact, it's very likely to perpetuate or induce or increase the symptoms it's marketed to treat, sometimes even causing those symptoms. And so when we really get to that truth, which I have discovered on a number of occasions, in 2006, I had enough. I had enough of kind of lying with these diagnoses, or like white lying. I don't really believe in diagnoses. And so I had enough of it, and I started to take my clients off their medicines and off their diagnoses. I had a couple thousand clients in my outpatient practice. And I took several hundred of them off their medicines with their consent, and sure enough, each and every one of them got better, like way better, like profoundly and reliably better. Not right away, by the way, because the medicines they're built to have a spike of the symptoms they're marketed to treat upon discontinuation. Mm-hmm. That's how the medicines are created. It's okay. They're only medicines. You can choose to eat them or not eat them, but they're all, they're not the medicine's fault. I mean, medicine, it can't be their fault. They're a benign object. They're a piece of plastic. It's not.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's not their fault. And so if you look at that, you could see that they are designed, in fact, to give you a boost of the symptoms it's marketed to treat. upon discontinuation. So then you're left with this idea of, I don't like to be on medicine, but coming off medicine was too hard. And so I guess given the choice of two evils, I'll stay on medicine the rest of my life. And that's a very cool program. And look, it's a great component of the psychopharmacological industry. And I'm not even blaming the industry, because the industry's not a thing either. I tried to call the industry yesterday.
People are, no, I get it. I know exactly what you're getting at when you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to call the industry, except I couldn't find a phone number.
Yeah, right. They don't. Yeah, they're not picking up.
It's not a thing. They're not a thing. And so when you start realizing that it's not the industry, it's not doctors, it's not the insurance company, it's not big pharma, it's not the medicines, it's not anything. What it is, in 2006 when I took all those people off of medicine, I wanted to scream it from the mountaintops that everybody got better. It's like, we're not really helping people. We're actually hurting them. We need to stop doing this. You need to stop feeding your kids meds. We need to stop feeding our patients meds. We need to stop diagnosing patients. I wanted to scream that, be violent about it. But violence doesn't really work. So I had to back off a little bit and see how to smooth this down so that I could actually create a conversation that people could listen to on a future podcast. And what I did is just back off, where is the entry point to the cycle? And the entry point to the cycle, surprisingly, but really powerfully enough, is that each of us thinks there's something wrong with us. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's why we go to a doctor. Why do you go to a doctor? You go to a doctor when you think there's something wrong with you. And, people don't come to a psychiatrist to find out if there's something wrong with them. They come to a psychiatrist to find out what's wrong with them. They already have determined that there's something wrong with them. That's why they're going to a psychiatrist. So what's really interesting, another sideshow that I think you'll appreciate is, I think psychiatry is the only subspecialty that if you tell somebody that they're okay, they get pissed.
No, I'm sure it's very much true. Yes, because
true.
Yeah, it's been my experience very much in my life. And I've noticed it's not generational either. It's just people that, they want something very easy to point out and say, this is my problem. Exactly. It's easier than admitting that there might be something else going on, that it could be anything else. It doesn't matter what it is. And that's your point, right? Is it that these things are so ubiquitous oftentimes, and if you're not spending time talking to people, you can't figure out what's really wrong with them. You don't know what is the underlying issue with someone until you sit down and you converse with them and you meet them on a human level and you get what's driving who they are, because so much of our health is about a mental state and about what we've been told and about what we can access in and around us in terms of support, mental and physical support. I love this conversation, and I love your story here, because it resonates with me. It's very similar to my own. I'm a communicator. I didn't go into the health industry. I went into the communication industry, and it was because I could talk to people and I could get to them on a different level, and especially in this space where in radio and podcasting, broadcasting, where it's almost a one-way communication. I remember early on talking to people in school and through my education, and people that were in the industry, talking about how people respond to the voices on the TV and on the radio, and how the parasocial relationships that they form with the individuals across there are important relationships. And that just fits right in with my communication, because you become a trusted voice. You become something that people are listening to in a place, in space, in a time where people are looking for honesty and truth, and they want to hear things that help them, and they don't even realize this. And as I've come here to do this over the years, one of the things that has happened is that I have become friends with Dr. Dean Lloyd, and he loves to refer to himself as a facilitator and a healer, because he's talking about the exact same things you're talking about. You're talking about it from a mental health perspective. He's talking about it from an allopath and naturopath perspective, but it's the same conversation. It's literally the same conversation. It's all about having a connection with the patient, that you can't just talk to somebody for 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 4 minutes, wherever, and truly diagnose what is wrong with them, because it's multifaceted. And how long has it been? Are you talking to an adult that's been told since they were a child that they have ADHD and have, they've been given drugs or whatever it is? And, this is I think it's really important, and it's great to see that there are so many more people like yourself. That's one of the things across the Podmatch system that pops up all the time, because of the keyword configuration or whatever I have to try to get guests, and it's somebody that's come to a realization like yourself, like myself, like Dr. Dean Lloyd, that it's not about these systems, that they're their problems, and within them there are things that you can target to try to fix and all that. But what we really need is connections between people, and you need to listen to people, and you need to get to the heart of the matter with them. And it's such a breath of fresh air to hear somebody talk about it in the mental health perspective, from the mental health perspective, not just the doctor, the allopath perspective, where they realize that somebody needs to be spoken to, and that they need to create a relationship with their patients, something that used to exist, something that doesn't exist anymore, and them talking about the mental health aspect of it and how important it is that we have a solid ground of mental health to build our physical health on. So it's nice to hear somebody from that other side talking about these same things and relating to them in the exact same way, and in entirely so much of a similar. Dr. Dean Lloyd's the same way, just wants to communicate with people and wants to make people happy, and wants people able to, the comic books, and it's not just a backdrop, it's not just my collection. I own a comic book store, and one of the reasons and I've wanted to all of my life, and one of the reasons is because comics communicate, and they communicate on a high level. They communicate on a level that's much higher than the average person or the average communication that a person is given, and they speak to you in so many different ways, the mix of the art and the words and everything. And so, I just love being in this space with people with real people who are actually helping people.
Yeah. Yeah, we the real part of us, this idea of whatever real is. So first of all, I want to make one thing clear. I don't even call people my patients ever, and I don't do that anymore. Because that creates a doctor-patient relationship,
Fair
and
enough.
a doctor-patient relationship is a power gradient that's insurmountable.
Yep.
So instead I lend myself as another human. And just another human who's willing to listen, hear, resonate, and connect with other people through conversation and communication, and powerful interchanges of authenticity and genuineness. So, what behooves us, or what our goal is, or what our intention is, or maybe what our purpose is more than anything, is to come to grips with our own core self, our own genuine, authentic core self, so that when we are communicating with another, we're doing so from a human frequency, rather than from a frequency that's been designed and manufactured in order to protect ourselves from the person we really are. Like we actually pretend to be somebody that we're not in order to protect ourselves from the person that we are. And we learned how to do that in about first grade, when they told us to stop talking and stop exploring. And so we had to sit down and be somebody who we really didn't know ourselves to be. And so this split has gotten more and more over the years. The crack in the sidewalk has gotten deeper and deeper, and we've never gone back and fix it. But the way that we come back and fix it is by getting in touch with our core selves, moving out the things that are in the way of us being genuine and authentic in our presentation. And then when we can connect as humans, all of a sudden we start seeing that the other 8 billion people who are humans walking the face of the earth can actually connect with us as well. I believe that you might have that skill, or you do have that skill to be able to connect with people of all walks of life, whether it's a doctor or somebody in the streets, an opportunity to share your thoughts and ideas, and also listen carefully to wherever they're coming from. And in that interchange, that connection, that resonating harmonic connection, that's where healing emanates from. And if anybody anywhere in your entire listenership has something in their life that is more powerful than the healing mechanism that happens when we connect with another person, I really want to know
You'd
about
like to hear about it. No,
I
absolutely,
really
because
want to know about it.
the thing with the comics is that I get this story all the time. It just happened just the other day again. It happens all the time. People come into the store and I approach it all the same way. You know, I let them look around and they wander around. And our store is pretty impressive. It's a nice store.
It looks
it's
good.
not one of these holes in the wall where it's just a
Yeah.
couple of dirty boxes and things are stacked up and you can't find your way through and the customers all smell and just your sort of cliche of geekdom type places. It's a nice, comfortable place to come in and to be able to enjoy your hobby. And that's the thing about it, is that it's so impactful on people. So they wander into the store. This happens the other day. There's three of them, older gentleman, older lady, and then a younger man. And it's a uncle, mother, and the nephew, the son. And I speak to the uncle and because he's just kind of wandering around the place, and that's what I let people do. But then I'm watching and say, oh, well, he doesn't really know what he's looking at. And so I ask him, is there something you're looking for? Can I help you? And he says, no, I've never been to one of these places in my life. I have no idea what I'm looking at. And you come in our store, it can be overwhelming, especially if you've never been in there. There's so much, and it's everywhere. And he says, no, it's my nephew over here. He comes, he likes this stuff, and he comes and looks around. And he proceeds to tell me a story I've heard. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've heard this story, that he has ADHD or whatever, has social problems, has communication problems, is learning problems, is struggling. It doesn't want to do what they're doing in the public school system, and the teachers can't get him to read. And so what do? They introduced him to comic books, and it's improved his ability to read, and he's improved his ability to communicate, and it just across the board. Dungeons and Dragons, heavy metal music, everything. Conspicuous use of substances, all these things they tell us that we're not supposed to do, that actually do sort of try to open up the mind and open up the experience. And more importantly, the thing about the comic book shop, about these worlds, these fantasy worlds, Dungeons and Dragons, it's about the relationship. It's about coming together, and it's about sharing the experience with other people. You don't do it alone. Every collector, every game player, you may have your games, you may have your collection and stuff that is just yours and it's there for you. But the greatest thing you want is to share it with other people. And the fact that it impacts people like that so often, it's just fantastic. It's a wonderful thing. I know I get that feeling that you get, and it's a weird thing maybe for some people to understand just through comic books, but that would just prove that they don't understand that ability to communicate and how important it is.
Yeah, it's very central. The idea of the essence of all healing comes through a human connection. And when we really get that for all of us humans, we can see a couple things. For instance, you meet somebody attractive and they get you and you get them and you connect with them. And then all of a sudden you're calling it love. And you're calling it love because there's deep connection. That's the whole point. So you could even make a case that behind all love is a connection as well. And, like connection is what we're after. Even monks in caves, what are they doing in caves alone? Well, they've had their heart broken, or they've learned that connections are difficult. Connections are challenging, and they go and connect with themselves or connect with spirit or connect with their whole purpose in life. And ultimately, what we're looking for is to find a group of people, or at least one single person who we can communicate with, who can connect with us, who can resonate with us, and who can essentially get us, understand us or relate to us, if you will. And there's, when you're talking about these people who have been diagnosed with the alphabet soup list of things, in this case, ADHD, which you're right, is often alleviated or dealt with by actually putting something in front of the person that they want to do.
Give a rip about. Yeah,
exactly. It's not like comic books are all that special, but they're easy to get into. They're easy to care about. They're easy to do and easy to learn from. But if you ask a child of massive energy to sit down and stare at a whiteboard while you're showing them how to make a cursive B versus a cursive D, that's going to be pretty hard to keep that dude in the seat and keep that dude attentive. And so, again, we're back to Krishnamurti's quote. It's not his fault that he's unattentive. It's not like there's something wrong with him that he can't sit in his chair long enough to look at your boring stuff on a whiteboard.
Yeah.
It's boring stuff on a whiteboard. Let's just put it that way.
It should be boring stuff on a whiteboard.
It's all it really is. And so let's give the child some grace and let's give him some room to learn and to adventure, and it's not just children, by the way. It goes on into the adults.
Well, that's the worst part of it, right? Because they get programmed as children and they sort of get it in their head that there are solutions other than, well, not that there was a problem in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it may be that there never was a problem. Yeah. That's what we start looking at. And again, that's a great place to start. Now, what's really important here is a disclaimer for some of the people that are listening to your show, which is there's a disclaimer that says, there's a group out there, a very substantial group who believes that they love their diagnosis, they love their therapist, they love their treatment plan, they love their medications, they wouldn't trade any of it for anything. It's the best thing that ever happened to them. Now they have a reason for being who they are, and they think that any talk about it not being the best thing for them is somehow heresy. But here's what I have to say to them. Of all those people, if you found something that you wouldn't want to shift for the world, like it's the best thing that ever happened to you and you wouldn't even consider an upgrade, you got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it for the rest of your life. It's so good. Like, good for you. Because most of us humans, we don't get to that peak in any area of life where we wouldn't trade what we have for anything. If that's where you got, by all means, please, for real, more power to you. Continue down that road. This conversation is for the 10 or maybe several 100 million people who don't feel that way, who feel that the system has failed them one way or another, or has misdiagnosed them, overdiagnosed them, underdiagnosed them, mistreated, undertreated, overtreated, mismedicated, undermedicated, overmedicated. They've done something that has made their life actually go downhill or not go uphill as fast or as real as they would hope. This conversation is about that group. And if we look at that group, we can start realizing that one of the things that it takes a powerful conversation to promote is the idea that maybe just like a log in the fire, or just like what Krishnamurti says, maybe there's nothing wrong with you in the first place. Maybe you're stumbling, bumbling, and tumbling through life because there's no owner's manual. There's no recipe book. We don't know what the hell we're talking about. Most of us, in fact, all of us don't even know what we're doing. We just do what other people do. And if they're doing it, then it must be right. And so that's how we do it, because if a big group of people that we respect apparently are doing a certain thing, so in order for us to be like them and to be considered normal, we'll do what they're doing. And we all bumble and stumble into what it means to be an active and alive and pertinent and, contributing human being. And when we don't even have a diagnosis of what a normal human being is. And so there's a lot of
standard. Well, and if you asked somebody what the standard was, nobody would recognize it.
Yeah, no one knows what normal is. So that's what makes it really interesting that we think we have confidence about what abnormal is. How can we how could we know what abnormal is if we don't even know what normal is?
Abby-normal.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't even know what abnormal is, and we make up these diagnoses oftentimes after the treatment is designed. So I want people to get that. Like, a medication gets created, and then the diagnosis that's going to be associated with that medicine actually gets created afterwards.
And
that's
a side effect of the medication.
It's not. It's interesting. It's not a side effect of the medicine. It's actually an effect of the medicine. It's how the medicine is designed to produce that effect.
No, of course, but yeah.
So a side effect assumes that the medicine's doing something good, and the side effect is the stuff on the outside.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
And so, basically the medicines are not designed to cure you. They're not designed to heal you. They don't even promote or market them in that direction.
It's a misnomer that they're called medicine.
Yeah, it is a misnomer.
Suggests that something will be cured. These things are not cures.
No, except there are cures, but they don't come in the form of a pill. That's what's here.
No, absolutely. Yeah, of course there's, yeah. For things that are actually wrong with people. Again, when you're talking about this sort of mental state or the things that make us happy or whatever, short of harming other people, whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, and even harming other people, as it turns out, doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. And this is the whole point, is that we think that if people, people are like consistently making the decisions that they think is right, all things considered. That's what people are doing. And they're doing that whether they're crazy people or evil people or bad people or good people or strong people or smart people. Everyone is doing the next thing that they think, all things considered, is the next right thing to do. And so when we really look at that, we see that each of us has our own template for what it means to be alive. And even if someone is, it's no one would say that, or very few people would say it's right to actually hurt somebody. But I know I've hurt people. I've hurt people inadvertently. I've hurt people even on purpose before. And that's part of living. The idea is that you have to pick and choose what's coming up next to you. And the more attuned we get to this core self, we move off the mud and the rust and the cobwebs and get in touch with our resonating tuning fork of our human frequency, that's when we're more likely to be able to relate as a teammate, as a member, as a tribal member of this remarkable thing called the human race. And once we do that, then we can connect with each other, and we start realizing that in that connection, that's where groundedness and healing actually emanates from.
Well, we've been given a fake presentation. We've been told about these things that we're supposed to have in common versus the things that we do really have in common. We're supposed to have sort of subset of values that are Western values, and these things are particularly important to society and who we are as a people, except that there are so many people, this shared experience that we have, that have no concept whatsoever of what the next person right next to them is going through on any level, economically, socially, mentally, physically. So the idea that we have a shared experience in and of itself, that we have a shared culture, is a lie. It's somebody's determination of what our society is supposed to be, of what our culture is supposed to be, what is supposedly supposed to be acceptable. These aren't individual choices. They're things that have been set out before us, long before us, because we're not, we're all coming along sometime after many of these things have been set about who we're supposed to be and what's supposed to be important in our lives. So there's not really any hope of changing that, because it becomes sort of systemic. It becomes a part of the system. It even becomes a framework for the system if you're talking about Western culture and American culture in general. And so what if you're one of all of these people out there that don't fit into this tiny percentage of what's envisioned as American culture or what's supposed to be important in society, and you just don't fit in? And who are you? Where do you go? Well, you either figure out your own path like you did, like I do, and you realize that all of those things that people are telling us are important maybe aren't important. Maybe they were important to them. Maybe they're important in some place and space and time, but they're not important to me right now. They're not what I need right now. And we go off and do our own thing, but we're a small percentage of the people. There's everybody else is this percentage, a larger, greater percentage of the people that is stuck going, well, obviously there must be something wrong with me because I don't accept it. I don't fit in. I'm not a part of what this designated culture is supposed to be.
Yeah, this is where we get to really show you the off-ramp toward anarchy right here. That's exactly what's here. And we start really looking at, if I think there is, in fact, a shared culture. There's a shared experience, but how we perceive it, our individual points of view are from different facets.
And that's it. That's the point, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We see the experience. We have the experiences that we have, and we do share them, but we see it from a different perspective. And I see it from my diagnosis of Fred Moss, and you see it from your diagnosis of Michael Storm, and everybody sees it from their own personal diagnosis. So what's really, what Welcome to Humanity is based on is exactly this. So we start getting the human experience is an experience that we all share with our own individual viewpoints. And we start being able to see and say, welcome to humanity, no matter what happens. So whenever anything happens, we can say, welcome to humanity. Whenever you're having trouble, welcome to humanity. Whenever you're in ecstasy, welcome to humanity. Whenever you're like in a miracle, welcome to humanity. Whenever you're bored, welcome to humanity. This is it. This is welcome to humanity. And then after that, I wrote a couple books, the Creative 8, helping people. That's called Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression. And that book talks about, creativity, 8 forms of creativity. There's actually 11 forms in the book. And, how we can set forth into communicating, even be over and beyond what we do with our words and our ears, like you and I are doing here on screen. And we start looking at art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, and these kinds of things. And then I wrote another book called Find Your True Voice, which, of course, is no real surprise for the title. And what I'm talking about there is moving this stuff out of the way that is in the way of you being yourself. When we start looking at that, we start looking at, well, how do we make a difference then? Well, my best way to make a difference is to come on podcasts. I love being a podcast guest. I love taking stages. I love being a keynote. But as a podcast guest, we have an opportunity. Also, I get that, the very sacred opportunity to borrow your audience and to share, my story and your story, to expose your story, to make you look good. That's what I'm interested in doing. You look really good as a host, and to have me disseminate some kind of information that might alter somebody's view of their own self or of their family. Because look, at the end of the day, many podcasters ask at the end of the last conversation, the last tidbit, they say, okay, so if you had one thing you wanted to pass on to listeners, what it would be? That's the most common last question.
Very typical, very easy, yeah.
Yeah, and so the last thing is, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, really, dude, there's nothing wrong with you.
That's the first thing. That's the first thing you said, because it's the truth. And that's what matters. And all you have to do is convince somebody that that's okay. And it really doesn't take a lot of convincing. It really doesn't. I mean, there are some people out there that are so stuck in it that it's going to take a lot for them to dig out. But the biggest barrier to that is the desire to be different, to the desire to change. It's one thing to notice that there are things out there that are different, that you want to be different, you want to strive for something else. It's another to make the effort to actually take the steps. And so you have the people that there's this large percentage that they'll either get there or they won't, and they just are where they are. And like you said before, if they found their bliss, follow it, whatever it is. But then there's this other subset of people who are somewhere in between, and this is kind of the people that I really like to talk to. The people that are somewhere up here on the bell curve, they're not so far down here on either side that they're jaded in one way or the other. Trying to talk to these people up here who hopefully, presumably, are a little bit more open to the idea that there's something more than just this system. There's something more than what other people have told you is okay, that there's a whole world of ideas and things out there. And we're told this as children, but as we start to get older, by the time we hit our teen years, it's altered, it's changed. We're told then that we're supposed to, well, now you're older. You're supposed to take on new responsibilities, and you're supposed to follow a certain path, and you're supposed to go ahead, go get your education, and go get a job, and get a family, do these things. And again, what about all of these people that it doesn't work for them, that it doesn't go their direction? They're not left behind. There's not something wrong with them, but they've been told for so long that there is. It's really great to get a chance to talk to you about this stuff, because there's any number of people across the spectrum, in the political spectrum, that have these same problems. It's created such a mental crisis in America and really around the world, the idea that there is one right way to do things and one wrong way to do things, this false paradigm of the left and right. And it's so invasive, it's so pervasive, it's everywhere. It's just it underlies everything we do. And there are any number of people who have addressed this situation and are looking at it, particularly now. I think there was Wall Street Journal article or something just a couple weeks ago that I shared that talked about something that I've talked about forever, and there's this underlying sort of unsettled, unease ground that we're all walking on, and it's because of this political system that resides over us, and it just is everywhere on us, and with it creating yet another layer, and one of the most impenetrable layers of fact or truth. It's everything is based on its facts or truths, and those are very limited to within the paradigm of not just the left and right, but of the system itself versus a non-system. And I'm sure you're aware of this, that these systems become a monster of their own. And you were talking about, well, it's not the fault of the system. No, and that's true, because you can't call the system, but the system is these people, and these people are trapped in a mindset, a guideline set that pushes them in a certain direction, and that's the direction of maintaining the system. What is everybody crying right now, both on the left and right, that democracy is at stake right now? Well, I got news for you. If democracy is at stake, just exactly what was it that was supposed to keep us from this point in history? Because it was democracy that got us here. It was this idea that we have this shared social experience, that we can just give over our controls and our fears and everything to this amorphous thing called the system, and that it'll take care of us, and it'll be there for us, and all we have to do is participate and go along with it all.
Yeah, it's quite a paradigm that we've been programmed to believe is going to help us, and we don't have real access to any kind of confirmation that we're going to be helped that way. Democracy has brought us to exactly where we're at now. If we call where we've been inside of a democracy, if we make that very loud leap, and that we've been living in a democracy up until now, then we could say that whatever we've gotten from the democracy has led us to who we get to be now. But what's really important,
or hasn't prevented it.
Hasn't prevented it, exactly. And what we really get here, I think that there's one piece to take a peek at, and it's not separating mental health from the rest of life. I think that's really important. The idea is to realize that the only place that we have access to working from is the place within ourselves. So we start actually looking at what is it take to start realizing that the circumstances in life, no matter how they are, whatever the government or whatever the people or whatever the weather or whatever the decisions are that are made out there in the real world, are not our business. Ultimately, the goal that we have is to get ourselves centered, grounded, and rooted in who we know ourselves to be. And once we do that, again, moving out the things that are in the way of us being ourselves, so that we can then align ourselves with our core values and with who we really are, then we open up the possibility, and it's more than a possibility. We open up the pathway to resonating with the rest of humans at that same frequency. We move off the rust and the dust and the cobwebs, and we move those things off, and now we get access to our real self. We no longer have to stutter. We no longer have to wonder, what did that person say so I can say the same thing, or what does this person think so I can think the same thing. We no longer have to do that. We don't have to be artificial with ourselves. Our Henry David Thoreau, he said, the mass of men go through life in quiet desperation and then go to their graves with their song still in them. And that's really what is happening with so many of us. We are, it's the greatest tragedy of all time to go through life and never have anybody actually get to know who you are. Like, what was the point there? Did you actually start your life pretending to be someone you're not and then stuck to it your whole life? And then you never let anybody know who you really are. That's what I think Thoreau's talking about. We go through life with quiet desperation, and then our song is still in us because we haven't had the courage, if you will, or the willingness to share our song with others. But when we start sharing our song with others, we start realizing that if the purer we are about the song that we're sharing, the more likely we are to be understood by others as having that be a beautiful song. And that's what's really here, is that do the work in the inside, do the Moss method. The Moss method is something I created. I compiled. I didn't create any piece of it. Actually, I just compiled the 20 time-tested and proven things that we can do to give ourselves essence to our core. And they include everything from gratitude to meditation to, nature, to creativity, to hydration, to nutrition, to pampering, to spirituality, to, being of service is a big one, and then like sleep hygiene and journaling and reading really great books and, these kind of things, like actually drinking herbal teas, and there's some, breathing exercises. All those things are part of the 20. And when you start looking at those things, if we were to do a good handful of those things every single day, we do get closer to who we know ourselves to be, rather than fading down the trackway towards someone that we're pretending to be in order to fit in. Like we find ourselves so afraid of being dismissed and so afraid of being disregarded or disrespected that we're willing to sell our soul and start saying things that we don't even look. Imagine this. We've actually reached a place in this lifetime where many of us are saying things out loud that even we don't believe. That is incredible. When you start looking at what the hell happened, that we get a chance to speak and we're actually saying things out loud that even we don't believe.
Yeah. I think that there's that comes to that political thing, because it's all this socio-political idea that we have to fit in, and that you have to fit a certain mold to be able to fit in, and that's it's such a silly idea. You turn society into a set of rules instead of just it being the people that make up the reality that is around us. I absolutely believe that everything that man accomplishes is done in spite of these controls and systems that are put in place, that it's the people that realize that these things don't really matter, that they're just these things that are over here, that I'm over here and I don't have to be in this, that I can do something else, that are the people that continue to drive and make change, and they're the ones that figure out how to overcome the barriers that socialists and other lazy people, other scared, confused people who don't know who they are and can't figure it out for themselves and couldn't find a job outside of public service. They couldn't manage themselves in a real job where they actually had to serve customers and produce results. So I think that as long as we have those systems in place, that those people who are like that and are happy that the ones that you talked about earlier, they're just happy to take the drugs and just go on doing what they do. There's always going to be a place for them where they can exercise control over the rest of us and try to tell the rest of us who we are and who we get to be. And that's that off ramp that I'm looking for, that I'm looking to show other people. You're one of those off ramps. Dr. Lloyd is one of those off ramps. Pop culture and things like the comic books and playing video games and stuff like that. All these things that are demonized by the system, all the things that are demonized by the controllers and the people in these manipulative positions, all the things that they say are bad for you and don't want you to do. Because what do? They open your mind to a new experience. They open your mind to other people is what really happens. I don't know about you, even in sort of drug culture and drug experience, tripping on acid or something like that. It's not something you tend to do by yourself. It's something you do with some friends, you and some buddies. You pop a couple of tabs one night and you undercook a pizza and sit in the basement and wave your cigarettes around in the dark. You have an experience. You touch other people. And what are we told? We can't do those. We can't have those mind-opening experiences. We got 1 minute left. Last thought. You knew the question was coming. Anything you want to drop in there real quick before we go?
I just think that, it's wherever you're at, it's exactly where you should be, and there's nothing wrong with you. I think that's really important. And, if you're not in agreement with what we're saying, that's completely okay. And whatever working for you is what you should do. But while you're at it, if you're looking to really resolve any kind of human pain, discomfort, or misery or unpleasantness in your experience, do me a favor and at least try to connect with another person and watch what happens when that occurs, because light bulbs go off and Christmas comes and there's a magic that happens inside of that hugging and that embracing of your own human experience along with another that actually promotes healing at the highest level.
That's great. No, I appreciate that, because I think it is absolutely the message that we should be leaving with people. It's okay, and it's a message I leave people with every time I have a conversation with Dr. Lloyd. It's a message that I try to leave in every show, no matter what else you take away, that it's okay. It's okay to be you. I like to add that caveat about not hurting other people, but, if they want to be hurt, by all means. And that, just one more thought on that. You had mentioned earlier, it's not about not making mistakes. It's about not making the same mistakes twice. You can harm people, as it were, and learn from it, I guess, is the thing that you can get from it. Dr. Fred, thank you so much. Dr. Fred, drfred360.com. That's one place where you can catch up with him. Of course, go to towardanarchy.com. It's episode 2537, and all the links will be there. Thank you so much, Dr. Fred.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michael.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network.